So I already talked about Ray Dalio in one of my previous videos. He's one of the most successful investors in the world. He created his hedge fund Bridgewater Associates. And on the first day of 2011, Dalio announced that he would step down as the CEO of his hedge fund. I said that before, but what's interesting about this story is that the transition plan to replace Dalio didn't go smoothly at all. And that was contrary to what management thought was going to happen at the time. They expected the process to take at most a few years. It turns out they couldn't have been more wrong. Within the next 18 months, chaos ensued at Bridgewater. There was so much to take care of, the people in charge were overwhelmed. Even though they had worked with Ray Dalio for so long, they didn't actually understand how he was doing it. Dalio came back and he and his team approached the management issue like Ray Dalio approaches many of his own life challenges, with a very systemic, process-oriented way. They looked at Ray's attributes relative to other people to see what was missing, and they identified what they called the Ray gap. They found that the biggest component that needed to be brought on to fill most of the Ray gap was something called shaping. And this is what this video is about. It's about what shapers do and what defines them. So soon after identifying the gap, Dalio started researching shapers and what they had in common, with the intention to put together an archetype of the typical shaper. A shaper is someone who comes up with unique and valuable decisions and builds them out beautifully, typically over the doubts and opposition of others. Thanks to his success and reputation, he was able to connect with shapers he already knew, people most of us normal beings will never get a chance to hang out with: Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jack Dorsey, Reed Hastings. And Dalio asked those guys if they could take personality assessments to discover their values, their abilities, and their approaches, and a lot of them actually accepted. The insights and learnings from Dalio's project are absolutely invaluable, because again, most of us can't go up to Bill Gates and ask him to fill out a personality questionnaire. So let's get started with the first shaper's personality trait. Shapers are independent thinkers. On October 5th, 2011, a few months after Dalio started getting interested in shapers, Steve Jobs died, and Walter Isaacson published his biography soon after. And while reading it, Dalio noticed several similarities between himself and Jobs. For instance, Steve Jobs started his company Apple from his garage, and Dalio started his investment fund from his two-bedroom apartment. Steve Jobs revolutionized computing, music, and communications with beautifully designed products. Dalio revolutionized investing with a systemic, process-oriented method that relies heavily on decisions made by machines rather than humans. And nowadays, this might seem like so obvious to rely on computers to make investment decisions, but at the time it was a complete breakthrough, and so Ray Dalio was a trailblazer in that sense. Jobs and Dalio were also both rebellious. Dalio was actually fired from one of his jobs for punching his boss in the face, and he founded Bridgewater Associates shortly after that. In the same way Jobs dropped out of college, he took a job as a video game designer, and he saved enough money for a pilgrimage to India to experience Buddhism. I think we can agree that that's also not the most common thought process in your career for most people. And so shapers are independent thinkers because they don't let anything or anyone stand in the way of achieving their audacious goals. They also often have ideas way ahead of their time. For instance, Dalio always wanted his computers to be more powerful because he could then get more accurate results and predictions from them. And so he was already thinking that machines can make better decisions than humans on many levels for a lot of reasons, and one of them being that they're not biased by feelings. And again, it's so obvious now, but at the time it wasn't, and the technology was not there to kind of match his ideas. In the same way that Dalio always wanted more from the machines, Steve Jobs was notorious for always pushing his engineers and his employees to deliver beyond what they thought was doable. Not always in a great way, by the way. Be nice to people, don't be a douchebag to your employees. He was also known for that. And so when he revealed the then thinnest laptop in the world, the MacBook Air in 2008, many people couldn't believe he had managed to bring his vision to life. Personality trait number 2. Shapers are extremely resilient. Ray Dalio also spoke with Jack Dorsey, who was then the double CEO for two huge companies, Twitter and Square. Dorsey was also ahead of his time. In fact, he sketched out the idea that would become Twitter for the first time in 2000. I mean, some people at the time still thought the internet was a fad, right? And the first version of Twitter would only see the light of day 6 years later. But without question, the most prominent shaper trait in Jack Dorsey is his resilience. Dorsey was ranked one of the worst CEOs in America 2 years in a row in 2016 and 2017. He's been criticized countless times for being the CEO of 2 huge companies at the same time, rather than focusing his time and energy on only one. Investors have also complained about his numerous vacations, his silent retreats, his time-consuming hobbies. So Dorsey has never been the typical CEO, and he's had to face critics his whole life for it. Yet for the past 10 years, he's helped create 2 of Silicon Valley's most successful companies. The reason shapers are extremely resilient is because, as Ray Dalio points out, their need to achieve what they envision is stronger than the pain they experience as they struggle to achieve it. This is a very powerful concept, and beyond resilience, some are even able to become anti-fragile, a term created by Nassim Nicholas Taleb in his book Anti-Fragile: Things That Gain from Disorder. And this is how he defines the term. Anti-fragility describes a category of things that not only gain from chaos, but may need it to survive and flourish. We use the word fragile to describe people, things, and organizations that are weakened when harmed. And we use the words robust and resilient for things that can withstand harm without weakening. Taleb created the word anti-fragile because we didn't have a word for things that get stronger when harmed. And Ray Dalio, by the way, is also a good example of an anti-fragile individual. In the late 70s, he lost $100,000 on a bad stock market bet, which was almost all of his money at the time. And from that point on, for his entire career, he wrote down, studied, and analyzed all the mistakes he made in order to build up his knowledge. As a result, he went through many financial crises and almost always emerged from them richer than he had been before the crisis. And in that sense, he emerged stronger. He gained from the chaos. Personality trait number 3 of shapers. Shapers have a wider range of vision than average. When Ray Dalio asked Elon Musk how he came to start his company SpaceX, this is what he replied. For a long time, I've thought that it's inevitable that something bad is going to happen on a planetary scale that will require humanity to start over somewhere else, like Mars. One day, I went to the NASA website to see what progress they were making on their Mars program, and I realized that they weren't even thinking about going there anytime soon. I had gotten $180 million when my partners and I sold PayPal, and it occurred to me that if I spent $90 million and used it to acquire some ICBMs from the former USSR and sent one to Mars, I could inspire the exploration of Mars. So Elon Musk created 2 companies in very complex fields most people don't understand, right? Electric cars with Tesla and rockets with SpaceX. You don't just wake up one day and send a rocket to Mars or build an electric car. Do you even build anything on any given day, really? But yet when Dalio asked Musk what his background in rocketry was, his answer was the same as most normal people's answer. None. 0. He said, I just started reading books on the topic. So shapers are not only able to have a wider vision than average, but they also recognize that there are some things that they can't see. No one can see everything. And they have no problem with learning to see those things. And they do this through one of 2 ways. Number 1, hiring people who are better than them at specific tasks. Or number 2, taking in huge amounts of information to learn much faster than average. So they either rely on their broad vision or get it from others who can see what they can't. And thanks to this approach, almost all shapers are able to see both big pictures and small details, the levels in between, and the conclusions and perspectives to draw from each of these levels. Personality trait number 4, shapers are extremely passionate. Make no mistake, the number 1 reason Gates, Musk, Dorsey, Dalio are able to keep being the best at what they do for so long is because they are passionate about it. And that's the same for anyone who's performing at top level in any field. Nobody can keep up with that level of excellence for that long without being passionate. If you don't love it, you won't keep at it, and I think this is the biggest lesson to learn from shapers. I've mentioned this in other videos too. Some people take a very long time to find their passion in life, and the people who are lucky enough to find their passion at a young age are the ones most likely to get ahead in life. But it doesn't mean you should just sit around and wait for your passion to hit you like a mystic revelation. The best way to find what you love to do in life is to experiment and always try new things until you find something you can see yourself doing for a little longer time. The thing is, 99% of famous entrepreneurs, business execs, and CEOs, a lot of them are shapers. But it's important to remember that not all shapers are famous. I'm talking about those famous people because they're famous examples, so it's easier to understand what I'm talking about. But as Dalio points out in his book, shapers come in varying sizes. You probably know a few personally. They might be your local business, nonprofit, or community leaders, the people who drive change and build lasting organizations. It's also worth noting that you don't have to become a shaper to excel at something. If you're willing to get your head down to work and to do it for a long time, you'll most likely become successful in life. Again, the number one reason shapers drive change is not because they have all the qualities mentioned in this video combined. It's because they're passionate, they keep at it, and they develop existing and extra skills as they move forward with their vision. Warren Buffett, for instance, another one of the greatest investors of all time, he spends as much as 6 hours per day reading books and newspapers on his favorite topics. Bill Gates reads 50 books per year on average. Elon Musk would read for 10 hours per day as a kid. Most people, they read less than 12 books per year. So yes, those people are all shapers, but the number one thing that drives them is passion, and as a consequence of this passion, a desire to learn. And the rest is like icing on the cake. The millions, the money, the success, companies, the work ethic, that's all icing on the cake. What matters is passion and finding something you love. So again, if you haven't yet found something that gets you out of bed every morning, the best way to find it is to experiment and always try out new things. If you stumble upon something you can see yourself trying out for a little longer, then stick to it. Read up on it, learn about it, keep beating your craft. You may just have found your passion. Thanks so much for watching this video. Stay tuned for next week's video, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment if you feel like it, let me know what you thought of the content. I'll see you next week. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the journey you're on.